I tried to ignore her, but my mom's friend had other plans. Optional variations for extra impact. She wasn't supposed to notice me, yet she couldn't stay away. I tried to resist, but her presence refused to let me go. Forbidden attraction sparked when I least expected it. The first time I saw her, I tried my best to ignore the effect she had on me, but it was impossible. My mom had invited her over for coffee, something casual and harmless. Yet the moment she walked through the door, the room seemed different. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that demanded attention without ever asking for it. Her presence wasn't loud or flashy. It was subtle, like sunlight spilling through a window, warm and unmissable. I couldn't help but notice the little things. The way her hair caught the light, the gentle curve of her smile, the careful way she moved around the room as though she belonged everywhere and nowhere all at once. And then there was her voice, soft, low, but imbued with a warmth that made ordinary words feel significant. When she greeted me, it was casual, polite, but I felt the underlying intent, a sense that she wanted to connect, even in this first brief encounter. She handed me a cup of coffee, and our fingers brushed. It was just a moment, a fleeting touch, but it was enough to make my chest tighten. I quickly pulled back, chastising myself for feeling so unnerved. It's ridiculous, I thought. She's my mom's friend. It's not like this is supposed to happen. But every time she laughed, every time she leaned in slightly to make a point, I felt an inexplicable pull. There was something about her that invited attention without demanding it. Even her perfume lingered in the air long after she passed by. A delicate scent, floral but understated, comforting and intoxicating at the same time. My senses were heightened without me realizing it. The clink of her jewelry as she moved, the subtle rustle of her clothes, the warmth radiating from her hand when she gestured to me. It was sensory overload, and I wasn't ready for it. And yet, I found myself drawn in. I wanted to talk, to laugh, to engage. But I also wanted to retreat, to remind myself that this shouldn't matter. Felt taboo in a way I couldn't fully explain. My mom's friend, someone I'd known peripherally, suddenly felt magnetic, like the world had subtly shifted around her. Even the way she paused before sitting, the slight tilt of her head, made me acutely aware of her presence in a way I'd never experienced before with anyone my age. By the time she left that afternoon, I realized I couldn't shake the feeling she'd left behind. It lingered in the warmth of the room, in the quiet hum of conversation, and in my own restless thoughts. I tried to convince myself that it was fleeting, a simple case of noticing beauty and grace, but deep down, I knew it was something more, something that would not be ignored no matter how hard I tried. And so, just like that, the stage was set. My world subtly altered by a woman I wasn't supposed to notice, yet already could not forget. After that first encounter, I tried to focus on ordinary life, but it quickly became impossible. Every time I saw her again, whether at a family dinner, a casual visit, or even just passing by in the hallway, I felt my awareness sharpen. She had a way of appearing in the periphery of my vision, and suddenly, the world felt like it was playing tricks on me, highlighting her presence in the simplest of moments. It started with subtle glances. She would catch my eye from across the room, her gaze steady but fleeting, as if testing the waters without ever saying a word. I found myself wondering if she lingered on me the same way I lingered on her. My mind raced with possibilities, but then I chastised myself. This isn't real. She's my mom's friend. It's absurd to feel this way. And yet, absurd or not, I couldn't ignore the pull. I noticed small gestures that made my chest tighten. The way she casually adjusted a stray lock of hair, the tilt of her head when she smiled, the faint laughter that seemed to hover in the air longer than it should. Every movement, every expression, felt deliberate, intimate, and meant only for me, though I knew that couldn't be true. Even the brush of our arms as we reached for the same glass or plate seemed charged, a spark that neither of us could acknowledge outright. Her presence was intoxicating, not in a way that screamed attraction, but in a way that whispered it. I caught myself analyzing her every subtle motion, memorizing the sound of her laugh, the warmth in her eyes, the natural elegance she carried without effort. At times, It was almost maddening how aware I became of her. I would try to focus on conversation with others, on my own thoughts, but she intruded, silently, with a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. I also became painfully aware of the taboo, the silent barrier that should have stopped me from feeling anything at all. My inner voice reminded me constantly, "You shouldn't notice her like this. You shouldn't let yourself feel this way." But feeling anything, especially around her, was inevitable. She had a quiet confidence, a way of drawing people in that was gentle yet impossible to resist. Even as I tried to maintain distance, I found myself inching closer, subconsciously leaning toward her in conversation, lingering near her in passing, seeking small moments that felt like connection. By now, every encounter carried tension I couldn't name. It wasn't outright flirtation, but the weight of unspoken attraction was there, hovering in every glance and every accidental touch. My mind oscillated between fascination and fear, excitement and guilt. I wanted to resist, yet I wanted more than anything to be near her. And so, what began as a single impression evolved into a persistent awareness, an unshakable curiosity that demanded attention. She wasn't just my mom's friend anymore. She had become someone I noticed in every room, someone who made ordinary moments feel charged with possibility, and someone I would not, stop thinking about. It was during one of those quiet, unexpected moments that I first saw her differently. Less like my mom's friend and more like a person whose depth I wanted to explore. We were alone for just a few minutes, the kind of pause that happens when everyone else leaves the room and time stretches. She laughed softly at something I said, and for the first time, her eyes didn't just glance at me. They lingered, warm and curious, like she was trying to read me without words. Then she started talking about herself, in a way that caught me completely off guard. At first, it was casual, a small frustration, a fleeting worry, but gradually she allowed herself to become more personal. I listened, really listened, as she spoke about little disappointments, unfulfilled dreams, and the quiet loneliness that sometimes came with age and experience. I was struck by the honesty in her voice, the slight tremor that betrayed vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. She didn't have to look at me as she spoke, but I felt the connection all the same, drawn in by the subtle trust she extended. In response, I found myself offering comfort naturally without overthinking it. A hand on her shoulder, light and reassuring, seemed to communicate more than my words ever could. Her reaction was telling. A brief pause, a soft inhale, and the faintest smile that lingered just a second too long. It was intimate, yet entirely appropriate. A brush of human connection that left both of us aware of something deeper simmering beneath the surface. I realized then how dangerous this slow-growing tension could be. I was fascinated by her, drawn to her warmth, yet every interaction carried the weight of unspoken boundaries. Even so, it was impossible not to be present, not to lean slightly closer when she spoke, not to study the subtle expressions that flickered across her face. The way she tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, the gentle cadence of her laughter, the softness in her voice when she shared something private, they all etched themselves into my awareness. For the first time, I felt a mixture of protectiveness and admiration. It wasn't the kind of attraction that demanded immediacy. It was slower, more contemplative, like standing at the edge of a cliff and appreciating the view before deciding to take a step. Every glance, every subtle gesture, felt electric, though nothing physical escalated beyond fleeting touches. And in that space, I realized just how much I wanted to be trusted by her, to share something real, even if it meant confronting feelings I wasn't supposed to have. By the time our brief encounter ended, I was left with a quiet ache of longing. The warmth of her presence lingered long after she walked away, leaving me acutely aware of the pull between us. A connection I couldn't name, yet couldn't deny. She had let a crack appear in the otherwise untouchable wall of her composure, and I had glimpsed something fragile, authentic, and entirely captivating. And so, the stage was set for a delicate dance of proximity and restraint. I couldn't ignore her anymore, not fully, not without denying a part of myself that had already begun to care. It happened by accident, or at least that's what I told myself at the time. I had gone over to my mom's house to drop something off, expecting another casual, uneventful visit. But the moment I stepped inside, she was there, in the kitchen, reaching for a jar on the top shelf. I moved instinctively to help, stretching my arm just as hers came down. Our hands brushed, and the contact was electric. It was such a small thing, a fleeting touch, but it sent a jolt through me that I couldn't ignore. I pulled back quickly, feeling my face heat up, pretending to focus on the counter. But when I glanced at her, I caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't read. A quiet curiosity, a hint of something unspoken, something dangerous in its subtlety. We spent the rest of the afternoon in the same room, doing entirely separate tasks but acutely aware of each other's presence. The way she moved around the space was hypnotic, deliberate yet unassuming. I noticed how her hair fell just so when she bent to pick up a utensil, the slight sway of her posture, the quiet grace in every gesture. Every glance she offered felt loaded with meaning, even if the words we exchanged were mundane. There was a tension I couldn't name, something between the comfort of familiarity and the thrill of forbidden attraction. My mind kept reminding me of the obvious. She was my mom's friend, older, wiser, untouchable in the way some people just are. But my body betrayed me with every subtle touch, every brush of our arms, every accidental closeness as we moved around the room. She seemed to notice it too, not overtly but in small ways, how her hand lingered just a moment longer on the countertop near mine, the soft laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes, the way she occasionally let her gaze rest on me a heartbeat too long. It was silent, unspoken, and yet it said everything. I see you. I feel this too. At one point, she stepped closer to reach for a pan, and I instinctively shifted toward her. Not enough to be improper, but close enough that the warmth radiating from her body pressed softly against mine. I felt my heart thudding in my chest, my breath catching in my throat. There was no need for words. The air between us was already charged. By the time she left, I was left in a daze, my thoughts a tangle of excitement, guilt, and longing. Every sensory detail lingered. The warmth of her hand, the faint scent of her perfume that seemed to cling to me even after she was gone, the memory of her subtle smiles that hinted at awareness, at interest, at something more. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself it was nothing, an innocent accident in a casual moment. But deep down, I knew better. That day marked a shift. The tension between us had moved from subtle curiosity to undeniable, electric awareness. And even if neither of us dared to speak it aloud, we both knew. Something was starting that couldn't be easily ignored. The moment came unexpectedly. The kind of quiet pause in life where you realize you can no longer hide what's simmering beneath the surface. We found ourselves alone, the hum of the house fading into soft background noise. She looked at me in a way that made my chest tighten. Direct, open, almost daring me to speak the truth. And I did, though it felt like stepping onto uncharted territory. I can't stop noticing you, I admitted, my voice low, tinged with embarrassment and urgency all at once. I know I shouldn't. You're my mom's friend. It's not supposed to be like this. But I can't pretend I don't feel something. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability hidden behind her composed exterior. She hesitated, then admitted, I've felt it too. I've tried to ignore it, but it's there. And it's not just fleeting, it's persistent. The words were calm, measured, yet carried a weight that made the room feel smaller, warmer, almost intimate. We talked honestly, tentatively peeling back layers of restraint. She shared her fears, the propriety, the social expectations, the unspoken judgment that might come from those around us. I shared mine. Hesitation, guilt, confusion, and the strange mix of admiration and longing that had grown impossible to suppress. We spoke without judgment, without rushing, letting the conversation meander through unspoken desires, what-ifs, and the careful acknowledgement of mutual attraction. The tension in the room shifted subtly. It wasn't physical in the way movies might dramatize. It was quieter, richer, and infinitely more human. A hand brushed against mine as I reached for a cup, a fleeting, grounding touch that communicated more than any words could. Her hand lingered just a moment longer than necessary, and I felt it. Warmth, reassurance, a tether connecting us without breaking boundaries. For a few moments, we just sat there, letting the silence speak. I could feel the rise and fall of her breath, the way her eyes caught the light differently now, softer, more trusting. I realized that this conversation, delicate and cautious though it was, had opened a new level of intimacy between us. Not physical, but emotional. A bond built on honesty, acknowledgement, and shared understanding. It was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. We were aware of the taboo, of the age gap, of the social implications, yet we couldn't deny the pull that drew us together. Our words and gestures were small but meaningful. The slight tilt of her head, the soft exhale when she acknowledged my honesty, the way she allowed herself to lean slightly closer as if testing the comfort of proximity. By the time the conversation ended, there was a subtle shift between us. A quiet acceptance, an unspoken agreement that what we were feeling was real, valid, and mutual. It wasn't a declaration of romance, but it was something stronger. Trust, vulnerability, and the understanding that neither of us could ignore this connection any longer. And so, with a gentle smile and a lingering touch on the arm, we stepped back into the world outside the room. But something had changed. The unspoken bond between us had deepened, laying the foundation for the slow, careful unfolding of whatever this connection might become. After that honest conversation, everything felt different. The tension between us didn't disappear. It softened into something quieter, subtler, yet no less electric. Each encounter became a delicate dance of awareness and restraint, a slow acknowledgement of the connection that neither of us could, or wanted to, ignore. We started spending time together in small, seemingly innocent ways. Cooking in the kitchen, watching a movie on the sofa, walking in the park. Each activity became a canvas for subtle intimacy. Our hands would brush as we passed each other, lingering just slightly longer than necessary. Every glance, every tilt of her head, every soft laugh felt like a thread weaving us closer together. It was mesmerizing, a silent language that only the two of us could read. I became attuned to her rhythms. The way her shoulders relaxed when she was comfortable, the slight catch in her breath when something touched her unexpectedly, the softness in her eyes when she noticed me noticing her. Even small gestures, a stray hair tucked behind her ear, a fleeting smile shared across the room, felt laden with meaning. I found myself lingering in her presence, grateful for every unspoken moment, every brush of proximity. She, too, seemed more at ease, more willing to share herself in ways that were subtle but intimate. She would occasionally rest her hand on my arm when laughing at something, or lean slightly closer while sharing a story, as if testing the boundaries of comfort. There was no rush, no pressure, just a mutual understanding that closeness could be explored slowly, carefully, and respectfully. The world outside faded in these moments. It didn't matter who else was around or what social expectations hovered in the background. In these shared spaces, we existed simply as ourselves, aware of the growing attraction but choosing to honor it with patience and subtlety. Every touch, every glance, every quiet laugh became a moment to savor rather than a step to rush. I noticed how much I had changed, too. I was more aware, more attentive, more willing to slow down and truly experience the presence of someone I cared about deeply. She brought out a side of me that wanted to be considerate, observant, and fully present. The attraction wasn't just physical. It was emotional, intellectual, and deeply human. By now, our connection had matured into a slow-burn intimacy that didn't need words. A hand on a shoulder, fingers brushing as we reached for the same object, or sitting a little closer than necessary on a sofa carried more weight than any overt gesture could. The tension was no longer desperate or anxious. It was comfortable, electrifying in its restraint, and thrilling because it was shared. We were both aware of the unspoken truth. Something significant was growing between us. Not yet defined, not yet labeled, but undeniable. Every shared smile, every quiet touch, every lingering look built the foundation for what was coming next. A bond that promised emotional depth, trust, and the slow unfolding of something neither of us wanted to rush but couldn't help acknowledging. By the time the story reached its quiet climax, neither of us could pretend that our connection was accidental or fleeting. The moments we had shared, the subtle touches, the lingering glances, the quiet conversations, had built a bond that neither age nor circumstance could diminish. We had learned to move carefully around it, but now it was clear that restraint alone could no longer contain the depth of what we felt. It was a calm evening, the kind where the golden light of sunset filters through the windows, softening the edges of the world. We found ourselves alone once again, this time in the living room, a quiet cocoon of familiarity. She was sitting on the sofa, her expression open, relaxed, and inviting. I took a seat nearby, conscious of the space between us but aware that neither of us wanted it to be too large. We didn't rush into words. There was no dramatic declaration, no sudden confession. Instead, we spoke gently, honestly, acknowledging what had been growing between us. "I can't ignore it anymore," I said, my voice low but steady. "I don't want to." She nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips, and for a moment, the room was entirely filled with understanding. Her hand found mine, slowly, deliberately, in a way that felt natural and inevitable. The warmth of her skin against mine was grounding, familiar, and electrifying all at once. We didn't need to speak. The touch said everything. Trust, acknowledgement, and the desire to move forward, carefully, respectfully, together. We talked quietly after that, not about labels or societal expectations, but about feelings, hopes, and the subtle, steady excitement of exploring a connection that had grown too important to ignore. Every laugh, every shared glance, every small brush of fingers reinforced the understanding that we were no longer strangers in each other's emotional world. We were participants in a slow-burn intimacy that demanded patience, respect, and emotional honesty, and we were ready to honor it. The room was filled with warmth, not just from the golden sunset light, but from the sense of mutual acceptance. I noticed the softness in her eyes, the quiet strength in her posture, the faint but comforting scent that always seemed to linger when she was near. And in that moment, it wasn't just attraction. It was connection, recognition, and a shared acknowledgement that some bonds are profound precisely because they are built slowly, carefully, and deliberately. When the evening came to an end, we parted with a lingering hug, her cheek brushing mine just lightly, our hands reluctant to separate. It wasn't about urgency or desire. It was about presence, awareness, and the quiet thrill of knowing that we had found something rare and meaningful. As I walked away, I realized that this connection, our story, wasn't defined by age, circumstance, or expectation. It was defined by trust, emotional depth, and the courage to embrace something unexpected. And even as we returned to the wider world, that warmth, that understanding, and that slow-burning intimacy would remain with us forever, shaping not just this moment, but every encounter that followed. It wasn't a rush to romance. It was a journey into emotional intimacy, and for the first time, I knew we were ready to walk it together. If you loved this slow burn story, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to follow more age gap romances and emotional stories that tug at the heart. Comment below, what would you do if you felt a connection like this?